Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Rocky Top Rewind, VolQuest.com and the VolQuest YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys for joining us here tonight. A lot to discuss. Of course, Tennessee coming off a 63-38 loss at South Carolina. Disappointment there. We'll get into your questions. We'll break down that loss and what this means moving forward. A big news day for Tennessee football. I got to commit an injury, very much of note. So a lot to discuss here on the Rocky Top Rewind. I'm Eric Kane. That man is Brent Hubbs. And if you're watching this on the VolQuest YouTube channel, please like this. That way more Tennessee fans can see it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the VolQuest channel. Brent Hubbs, it was 63-38, a 31-30. It was a 4-point game in the third quarter, just like last week. But Tennessee this time was trailing by 4. And then it was all South Carolina from there. South Carolina went on to win 63-38, took advantage of some short fields. Defensively, Tennessee made one stop all game long, and it was brutal, but it was a good night for the home team, bad night for the visiting Volunteers.
Yeah, Tennessee was just bad on defense. There's no other ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was just an awful night of defensive football. Tennessee's coverage had holes in it. Tennessee's safety seemed to struggle a good bit from what I could see. And just give South Carolina credit. Spencer Rattler is a very talented quarterback, has been for a long time, as we all know, is a guy who is a bit of a rhythm guy. You know, I compared him, not the same type of player, but from a rhythm standpoint, he reminds me a lot of a guy like Matt Ryan. You know, Matt Ryan's a guy who can go 0 for 6, and then he can rattle off 14 straight. That's kind of how you feel like Spencer Rattler is. But Tennessee could not get him out of rhythm. He was in rhythm to start the game, and he remained in rhythm all the way through.
Yeah, he was. And again, this is the same guy that, threw for over 3,000 yards in a COVID-shortened season back in 2020, threw for 28 touchdowns. He lost his starting job last year at Oklahoma to Caleb Williams, who is also in the Heisman Trophy race now at Southern Cal. He comes to South Carolina, entering the football game, I think like 7 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Hasn't looked all that good. The offense hadn't looked good at all, but Tennessee's defense just couldn't find an answer. Spencer Rattler was in a rhythm. He was making throws that we haven't seen him make in quite some time. Tennessee's defensive back were giving cushion, too much cushion at times. Tennessee could not get home with 4 up in the front. South Carolina also went wildcat a little bit and threw a new wrinkle in there. But something you spoke to me about earlier today, and I noticed a couple of times on the rewatch as well. Even when Tennessee would play, say, a stretch or a sweep play, right, by fitting up the block, keeping outside leverage, forcing things inside, there wouldn't be a linebacker there. There wouldn't be a safety there. Tennessee just didn't have it all night long on the defensive end.
No, they didn't. And I will give Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator at South Carolina, a little credit. He did a couple of things schematically that you hadn't seen on some of those flare patterns out of the backfield. He did. It was not an illegal play. It would be after the ball was caught, because it was such a short pass. The slot receiver would a lot of times block the linebacker inside out. So it was almost like a crackback block, if you will. Not a legal block. I mean, it was face to face, but it was kind of a come back down the line, a little bit like a crackback block. And I think, watching the game live, you kept wondering, where's the linebackers? Where are the linebackers? Where are the linebackers? And some of the times the reason the linebackers didn't get there is they were getting blocked. Now, other times they let themselves get kind of caught up on the inside, and didn't play sideline to sideline well enough. And then when they did play it the right way, as you mentioned, with some fits, they didn't get the support from the back end the way that you would expect them to, and the way they were looking to. The other thing, too, is South Carolina's offensive line was really good in pass protection. And Tennessee couldn't get there. I mean, they just couldn't get there. Now, is that all South Carolina's line? Is that Tennessee? I don't think Tennessee's done a great job getting home with 4 all season long, right? I mean, in the LSU game, they got 5 sacks off a lot of twists and stunts with a very inexperienced offensive line. But in terms of winning a one-on-one matchup where you're not playing games and things, where you're in your rush lane and you win a one-on-one matchup, Tennessee's not won a ton of those, particularly off the edge this year. And in the Florida game, Spencer Rattler had a hard time getting his feet set because there was a lot of pass rush on them. Tennessee couldn't get there. He had plenty of time to set his feet last night.
Yeah, no doubt. He definitely did. John, we appreciate the super chat. John Hill chimes in. He said, "Hey, that loss was uglier than a Georgia fan's girlfriend. Time for Milton to shine, GBO." And of course, that's something we'll discuss over the next hour here on the Rocky Top Rewind. Hendon Hooker, unfortunately, his season is gone, and it's terrible. Sports are cruel, but Tennessee does have one more game, and then whatever bowl game you go to, Joe Milton comes in there in the end. He throws a beautiful deep ball to Squirrel White, and Tennessee's able to punch it in a couple of plays later. Joe Milton still throws it 100 miles an hour. Joe's going to, get the opportunity to make a start next week at Vanderbilt, and that's going to be a big moment for him. And, of course, for the Tennessee football team looking to, again, secure a 10-win regular season, first time since 2003.
Yeah, this is a big game Saturday. This is a big opportunity game. You don't want to limp home with 2 losses at the end here. The pressure is going to be on Tennessee. All the pressure is going to be on Tennessee this week. It's not going to be on Vanderbilt, even though Vanderbilt is playing for a bowl bid. The pressure is all on Tennessee. They're expected to win. How does Tennessee react to the Hendon Hooker stuff? Where's Jeremy Banks? Where are they injury-wise at the receiver position? Where are they injury-wise at cornerback? There's a lot of questions to be answered, no doubt. But this is an opportunity for Tennessee to show that the culture is where you think it is in your program, and you're not going to let a bad night in Columbia, South Carolina beat you twice, right? They did a good job of that against Georgia after the Georgia loss, but that was back at home. This is on the road at night. We'll see how this team reacts. This is not, other than the LSU game, this has not been a very good road team this year when you look at it. I mean, they were fell behind early by 2 scores against Pittsburgh, rallied for the lead at the half, fell behind quickly at Georgia after they had the early field goal lead. Georgia went, right down the field and do anything that they wanted to at that point. And then obviously last night they gave up 21 points in the first quarter. So Tennessee's got to be a better road team than what they've been. Now, they were a good, like I said, I don't want to take anything away from the LSU win because that counts. But that was an early morning start. They got that early turnover, and LSU never got off the deck. But if you take and look at what has happened in the other road games, Tennessee's not been very good. I think that they've been outscored in 8 games. They've only given up 27 points in the first quarter, if my math is right.
Yeah.
But when you look at the other 3 games, they've given up 45 points, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of first quarter points, particularly on the road in 3 venues. So Tennessee's got to get back and get going on the road Saturday night.
Trey, keep this over just a second. I want you guys to look at this South Carolina drive chart. It's tough to look at. Tennessee literally made 1 stop all night defensively. That first possession, it was good because Tennessee scored right before the half, and a little fortune there. The ball's tipped up by Sherrod Green, and Brew McCoy goes up there and makes the catch. And Brent, I think that's the play Brew McCoy initially hurt his ribs or got a little bit banged up on because he didn't look walking to the sideline looked like he was a little ginger, but nonetheless. You score for the half, you come back out offensively, you have to punt it away, but defensively you force a punt, and that's a good start. But touchdown to end the other 2 stops, quote unquote, are at the end of the half and at the end of the game.
They weren't stops. That was
yeah.
South Carolina stop saying, "Hey, it's end of the half. We're going to the locker room with a lead, and end of the game we'll take a knee and go to the house." Those aren't stops. You had 1 stop, and that was it. Everything else. When South Carolina was trying to move the football and trying to score, they could do it at will, and that's what they did.
2 things I think that Tennessee did not help itself out with: cornerback play. I mean, defensive play was not good, safety play was not good. Tennessee had no answer at cornerback. I mean, you saw 4 cornerbacks play. You had Danico Slaughter, who got banged up at the end, but he did not have a good game. You saw Brandon Turnage; they were picking on him all night. He goes out with an injury. Kamal Haddon comes in there, and he does not look good whatsoever the entire game. And then Christian Charles comes in there and looks lost a little bit at times. And he's been battling confidence issues all year long. So that's one thing. Tennessee had literally no answer at cornerback. And then the penalties, as you wrote in your 10 things you think you learned after this game. It's up at VolQuest.com right now if you guys want to check it out. Tennessee's been penalized more times this season, more times in the Josh Heupel era. But the penalties came at the worst times. One of the scoring drives, I think it was potentially the first scoring drive of the second half for South Carolina. Tennessee just gave them that drive with penalties. Tennessee on the other end, one of their drives, I think this was in the first half, You had a holding call, you had a sack, you had another holding call. It just came at the worst times, kind of like the pre-snap penalties at Georgia, and Tennessee just wasn't able to get out of its own way in order to try to get something going, at least defensively and offensively at times.
Yeah, I mean, 7 holding penalties the last 2 games for Tennessee, which is not good. The holding penalty early in Tennessee's second possession, negating a 28-yard gain, put them behind the sticks, forced them to punt there. The offensive pass interference penalty, which Tennessee, as we know, always flirts with that one. They got caught on that one. That would have been a 4th and 2 after that catch where Tennessee would have gone for it. Instead, it becomes 3rd and 25, which you don't have a lot of answers for typically, and Tennessee couldn't get anything going there, and they had to punt. It looks like you're off the field. South Carolina's going to kick a field goal, and it's going to go from 11 to 14. You're just going to stay within 2 possessions early in the fourth quarter, but then illegal hands to the face by Tyler Barron gives South Carolina a first down inside the 5, makes it 1st and goal, and you're not off the field, and suddenly instead of them, you're thinking about holding them to a field goal there, or at least having Shane Beamer in a decision-making mode on what would have been 4th and goal from about the 7-yard line or the 8-yard line. You let South Carolina go in and score. So you're exactly right. They were just very ill-timed and very costly. I mean, Tennessee couldn't overcome the mistakes, and that was certainly what happened in that game last night. John here wants to know, did Tennessee abandon the run against a poor run defense? Eric, I'm going to throw that back to you. Tennessee had 60 yards rushing on their first 2 snaps from the game, and they finished with 152 for the game. Was that just a simple fact of Tennessee was playing catch up and couldn't take advantage of the run, or do you think Tennessee kind of got away from the run a little bit early in that game?
I mean, that's something I noticed on my rewatch. And Tennessee still was running it pretty decently, even in the second half, down a couple of scores. And you look at that yards, yards per carry, 5.4. That's a decent clip. I mean, Tennessee had a better yards per carry average than South Carolina in this game, but Jabari Small gets off and has that 31-yard touchdown run. He looks good. Thought he ran pretty hard all night long. Thought Jalen Wright did some things as well. Again, there's a couple of times, both those guys, where you're just, one arm tackle away or just getting tripped up at the line of scrimmage where there's green grass in front of you. I thought at points in times, like when Dylan Sampson got in the game, you have a first down from the 14, I believe, and then you go 2 runs right up the middle with Dylan Sampson. I don't quite understand that. So I would like to see Tennessee run it a little bit more for sure, because again, this defense just gave up 374 yards on the ground to Florida. It was averaging 192 yards on the ground given up by defense so far in this season. But again, it is difficult. It changes the way you call a game offensively when you're down 11 points, 17 points, and then, of course, as the game goes on. So I did think that they got away from it a little bit. Still ran it 28 times. That's not a few, but I do think Tennessee could have done a little bit more damage on the ground. And, you saw a little bit of that with Joe Milton when he came in the football game. A little too late, obviously, and only scholarship quarterback healthy. It kind of makes you nervous a little bit, but they ran a couple quarterback draws with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think when the game was in reach, Tennessee was decently balanced. I mean, I thought they ran it enough kind of okay to keep South Carolina honest a little bit. But when the game got going and the game got 3 scores in the second half, I just don't think they felt like that they could run the football there, that they had to throw it and try to score fast. And so,
Yeah.
I think they abandoned it a little bit there. It wasn't way out of kilter in the first half of the football game. It certainly was in the second half, but because of where Tennessee was at just from a score standpoint. One of the other things that's interesting about Tennessee that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, I haven't done all the hard, I've not taken the time to go back and look at it. It feels like Tennessee is a big second down running team.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like there's a little bit of that there to make sure to keep the clock going so the defense can't sub any kind of specialty on third down. But I don't want to say predictable, but it feels like they're pretty run heavy on second down. I think if I were looking at playing Tennessee, I might play a lot of runs and stuff on second down because it kind of feels like that's the direction Tennessee wants to go a lot on second down. I don't think that's limiting Tennessee running the football. I think what limited them last night was the fact that the defense couldn't get a stop, and Tennessee had to score every time they had the ball in the second half trying to play catch up.
I would agree with that. And Trey, real quick, scroll over to the right a little bit. Let's see those South Carolina rushing stats. I noticed this on the rewatch and looking at the stats a little bit at the end of the game. Jaheim Bell, who's a playmaker, he's a tight end by trait. Brown is a wide receiver. Joyner is a wide receiver. Now, he was the quarterback in Wildcat. Spencer Rattler's the quarterback. Wells Jr. is a wide receiver. Leggetti is a wide receiver. McDowell, all the way down there, -4 yards rushing. He is the only running back by trade right there in this football game. Now, Christian Bill Smith was out. Marshawn Lloyd was out. But you don't like seeing 82 yards from Bell, who, again, he gets a decent amount of carries because they use him a little bit all over. You don't want to see 82 yards from him or 39 yards from Brown or 21 from Joyner out of the Wildcat. That was a little discouraging for me in that football game. Of course, there were a lot of things that went wrong for Tennessee defensively.
It was the lateral stuff for me. It
Yeah.
was just the fact, and I thought Missouri tried to exploit that a little bit. I think South Carolina certainly built off that. You saw that with Burton or Burden last week with Luther Burden. They got him
The wide
3
receiver, yeah.
touches, on some jet sweep stuff. They threw some stuff out in the flat a little bit and tried to get some things going that way. And I mean, Tennessee's going to see that this week against Vanderbilt. I mean, until they show that they can handle that perimeter run game or that perimeter short passing game, which is essentially an extension of the run, teams are going to continue to do that against them. And, Georgia didn't have to because they got a lead, but I think that's something Georgia probably felt like they could do. Jahmyr Gibbs did it. Obviously, if he'd have caught one ball, then that game might have been different. But that's something they did some things with. I think until Tennessee shows they can stop that, you're certainly going to see that. Vanderbilt's going to bring that part to the game on Saturday, and they're going to bring the zone read with quarterback run. The Wildcat stuff, they will run with their quarterback. They won't, bring in a running back to do that for them. They will just run it straight out of their base formation because he's going to carry the ball and run it a good bit. Tennessee's got to answer that bell this week. Now, I think this defense has got pride. I do. I don't. I mean, I know they're embarrassed by what happened. Yeah. And so we'll see, going forward what they elect to do and how they elect to play some things. But, you can't have those kind of performances like what you had Saturday night. I mean, that's a historically bad performance.
Yeah. And I saw Tennessee kind of adapt to it a little bit. Aaron Beasley adapted to it a little bit as the game went on. But again, the consistency, it wasn't there. We got plenty more going up here on this edition of the Rocky Top Rewind. Hendon Hooker, his injury, his legacy at Tennessee as his Tennessee career comes to an end. Plus, now with the college football playoffs off the line, a bowl game. Tennessee still very much in the conversation for a New Year's Six. What does it look like? That and more. Plus, we'll have Austin Price on at 8:45. Tennessee got to commit. Got a whole lot more left on 45 minutes remaining here on this edition of the Rocky Top Rewind. I'm Eric Kane with Brent Hubbs. Back in 60 seconds.
Welcome back into the Rocky Top Rewind. I am Brent Hubbs. Eric Kane's learning what a mute button is, but we're glad to have you back here on the Rocky Top Rewind as we talk about Tennessee's performance Saturday night at South Carolina, and just an ugly loss and a really disappointing loss, and kind of what's moving forward here for Tennessee with potential bowl games out there, but certainly coming up a challenge this week. Just to get back off the deck, Eric, and take on a Vanderbilt team that suddenly got a little life about themselves after back-to-back conference wins.
Yeah, they're playing with a lot of momentum right now. They're playing with a lot of pride. Senior day, bowl eligibility. We'll get into that in just a moment. I know I teased that, but I do want to hit one more thing. A question that was asked right here in the chat, a question we got throughout the game and after the game. Let's go ahead and address it. What do we know? Again, not what we think, what we've heard. What do we know about Jeremy Banks not traveling and playing in this football game?
Yeah, I don't think Jeremy Banks had a good week last week on a lot of different fronts. I don't think that he did some things that he needed to do, be on time, be places where he needed to be, take care of his business the way he needed to take care of his business, and that's what led him to not be there. I know there's a lot of talk about fights in locker rooms and all those things. I think there was a heated discussion, but I don't think anybody hit anybody, so I don't think there's a full-blown fight there or anything like that. Was there a disagreement and some heated discussion? Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case. I mean, Jeremy's an emotional player. He's an emotional person that way. But Jeremy didn't have the week that you needed to have to get ready to play and to be focused and take care of what he was supposed to do. Is this a divided team or a divided locker room? I don't get that feeling from anybody that's the case, Eric. This idea that's been out there that the defense was mad at the offense and basically threw the game last night. No, I mean, listen, Spencer Rattler played really well, and Tennessee had no answer, and Tennessee played really poorly. That's no excuse. Yeah. That's just a fact. They got beat. I mean, South Carolina's offense was more physical than Tennessee's defense at every position, in my opinion. Their wide receivers were more physical than Tennessee's secondary players, right? Their defensive front was more physical than Tennessee's offensive front. And so as a result of everything that took place with Jeremy Banks this past week, he did not travel, and we'll see what happens this week. I know Josh Heupel said post-game that it gave indication that he thought he would be back. We'll see. I think a lot of that's on how Jeremy Banks goes about his business. He's tweeted out, there was no altercation, and he's going to be back stronger than ever. We'll just have to see how Jeremy Banks goes about his week.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'll say this too, as far as the is there a split locker room? Is there a divide or anything? And conversations, two separate conversations that I've been privy of here today. From what I'm hearing, that's absolutely not the case. I mean, Tennessee defense just played horrible.
Laid an egg is what you call that. And again, I'm not making an excuse. Okay, so you got to give South Carolina credit. Spencer Rattler had time. He threw the ball extremely well. They played really well on offense, and Tennessee played as bad, worse defensively than you could ever imagine them playing.
And it's unfortunate too, because again, what was on the line. Also, a big loss in this football game. We mentioned it earlier, of course. News today about the rest of the season, which is just one more regular season game, but of course, a bowl game as well. Hendon Hooker, out for the season, torn ACL in his left knee. He goes down, Brent, with a non-contact injury. You've been around football your entire life. So have I. You see that. We've seen that happen before. It's unfortunate, but at the time of it, you knew kind of what it was. And it sucks, man. I mean, Hendon Hooker, he's been such a great story. He's a good player. He's a good person. He's a great leader for this football team, having a fantastic year. Had a really nice Tennessee career. Remember, guys, Jeremy Pruitt brought Hendon Hooker to Tennessee. Josh Heupel came on, and he did 15 spring practices, and he went out and got Joe Milton. Joe Milton starts the season. Hendon Hooker comes back in and then off to the races, and what he has accomplished in his Tennessee career has been incredible. So thoughts and prayers up to him for a speedy recovery. That guy's going to have an opportunity at the NFL, but what we do know, Brent, is there'll be no number 5 Hendo Cinco, unfortunately, next weekend at Vanderbilt, and so that's Joe time. Joe Milton will get another start for Tennessee. And as we were speaking on earlier, this game is, how are you going to get off the deck? This game is big now with Vanderbilt playing with a lot of pride and Tennessee playing with everything to lose, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, let me first start with Hendon Hooker in that injury. It was at a different point in the season, but it just reminded me so much of what happened with Jerry Colquitt on the 7th play of the season opener in the 94 season at UCLA. It was an option play. His knee buckled and his season was over before it ever got started. He had waited his turn and he never got the opportunity to play and run the show because he had been behind Heath Schuler. Hendon Hooker was not deprived of that. He obviously had an opportunity the last 2 years to take the reins of this offense and run with it. It just puts a big pit in your stomach that this happens. It's the cruelty of sports, and it's not just happened at Tennessee. It's happened a lot of places at the collegiate level, the high school level, the pro level. It's the cruelty of the sport. I think Hendon Hooker's legacy at Tennessee is firmly cemented. Listen, this guy beat Alabama and broke a streak there. But more importantly than that, Eric, he gave Tennessee national recognition and gave the program a face that they had lacked for many years, really. I mean, Josh Dobbs did some things at the, particularly his junior and senior year, that gave Tennessee some recognition there, but not anything like what Hendon Hooker's done. The Heisman race, just the features, his story. It's just, for lack of better words, it sucks to see it happen to anybody, but it really stinks when it happens to a guy who has paid his dues and taken advantage of a second opportunity the way he has. He's going to work hard. He's going to push to be back and get healthy. He's put him it kills him with the draft because he's not going to be able to work out and do those things and all of that. So he's going to have to start way down at the bottom and work his way through. But he will be a guy who will attack rehab. And again, a guy who gave Tennessee a face besides a head coach when they hadn't had a face. And because of that and the wins he's had, he's certainly left his legacy and left his mark on Tennessee's program.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a guy that I just think when you look back on his Tennessee career, the efficiency is through the roof. I mean, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks last season and this season. This season, he was in the Heisman Trophy conversation up until, this week. And, his stats are still, you put him up there with some of the best in the country. He's been phenomenal. And in his leadership, he's a quiet guy. But you see the way he carries himself, the quiet confidence and the way that he plays on the field and the way that he'll go to bat for his teammates. And more so than that, Brent, the way his teammates will go to bat for him. I know he's the quarterback and all that, but you see what the defenders say about Hendon Hooker, what the offensive linemen say about Hendon Hooker. So, I mean, just a great player, a better person. And, he's not done playing football. It's just unfortunately he is done playing football at Tennessee. But what that does mean, Brent, again, is there is a football game at Vanderbilt on Saturday. Joe Milton will get another opportunity. Joe Milton started the season a year ago, and he's looked really good in the mop-up opportunity. He's thrown some deep balls, and that's great. But again, that's so different than a 0-0 ball game with 15 minutes on the clock in the first quarter. I'm so intrigued to see how Joe Milton attacks this opportunity. This opportunity plus a bowl game, to see what he has, how different the play calling is, how different the game flow is, because it's a different quarterback. You love the physical tools and everything that Joe Milton can bring. I'm excited to see this opportunity for him, but of course, you will miss Hendon.
Well, and, the one thing you're going to miss about Hendon was, Hendon's ability to get you out of a bad play. He had the playbook at his disposal. He obviously had a great rapport with Cooper Mays and communicating along the offensive line. He was in a good rhythm with the receivers on where everything was going. I'll be curious to see how much there's some check with me, how much there's not audibling, or there is audibling when they go slow and the coaches are making the reads and the calls for him, or how much freedom they're going to give him. And then the other thing too is how, he's got to make quick decisions. The one thing Hendon did a great job of in his Tennessee career in this offense is his ability to make quick decisions. Now, I thought there were some times this year he got a little greedy and he held the ball looking for a big play sometimes. But I thought he was in a good rhythm last night, making decisions. I didn't think his accuracy was great, but his decision making was good. I mean, he was throwing to the right guys. We'll see how quickly Joe Milton can get it out of his hands and get going. Like the ball to Squirrel White. Everybody's raving about, right? He threw it 70 yards in the air again. Squirrel White was open 20 yards earlier. I mean, he blistered that guy off the line of scrimmage, and Joe waited a while to throw that ball. He's got to get it. He's got to make quick decisions, and Tennessee's got to help him make quick decisions.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker, who finishes his Tennessee season completing 229 passes, 175.5 efficiency rating, 27 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, 3,135 passing yards, averaging 285 passing yards a game. He's also rushed for a pretty solid number with some rushing touchdowns as well. If I can find these, he got 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, so
He's
he's had a
got
really
10 for
really
his
solid year,
career.
a good career here at Tennessee, and of course, now it's going to be Joe Milton time against Vanderbilt, and maybe for the foreseeable future in terms of what bowl game comes in. I want to get your thoughts on a potential bowl game: Cotton, Orange Bowl. Right now, Sugar Bowl might be off the table because the way that works is they'll go to the highest ranking SEC team not in the college football playoffs, and that might go to Alabama. But Cotton Bowl, Orange Bowl, still a really good destination. Could it be one of those? That, and we want your questions. Anything you want to ask us, fill up those comment section. We're going to take your questions and talk bowl games when we come back right here on the Rocky Top Rewind. Welcome back into the Rocky Top Rewind. I am not muted. I know how to do this. I've only done it, 10 other Sundays this season. Talking Tennessee's loss to South Carolina right here on the Rocky Top Rewind. I said we're going to get to your questions. So if you have any questions, fill out those comment sections there and we'll bring you on screen. Brent, let's start over here with Maggots. I believe that's at 117. Brent and Eric, with the defense, especially the pass defense, was a showing like this bound to happen at some point? I'll say this. I mean, it's happened already so far this season, happened against Alabama. And of course, but that's Bryce Young. It happened against Florida with Anthony Richardson, who coming into the game didn't look great, but I mean, gosh, you know what he can do when he's on. I guess in the same respect, this is kind of like the Anthony Richardson, and Spencer Rattler has great potential, but he hadn't shown it on a consistent level, especially in SEC play this season. I was not expecting that yesterday. Was I expecting Tennessee's defense to give up passing yards? Yes, because that's what it's done all season long. But that type of performance, I 100% was not expecting that.
No, I mean, I didn't expect that. It's this third time somebody's thrown for 400 yards against Tennessee this year. As you mentioned, Bryce Young had 455 and 453 for Richardson, and then 453 for Rattler. I think the thing for Tennessee fans that's so hard is it seems like there's a lot of quarterbacks that get well against Tennessee. And it seems like it's been that way for a while. Guys not playing well, then they play Tennessee, and all of a sudden now they're playing well. Or a backup comes in, they knock the starter out, the backup comes in, and the backup plays, well in the football game. Tennessee's obviously got deficiencies in the secondary. I think we've known that those deficiencies have been there. You want to mask those deficiencies by pressuring the quarterback, and Tennessee couldn't get to the quarterback. I mean, at one time on a delayed blitz by Aaron Beasley, they got there. I thought it was a smart decision by South Carolina to take the Atkins kid at tight end and play him in as a running back. And he was the personal protector essentially for Spencer Rattler. He was just looking for any A-gap blitzer, and they were blocking inside out, Eric. They were not worried about Tennessee getting around the corner on them very often. And he was just kind of patrolling the middle to make sure that they handled everything in Spencer Rattler's face. And they created a nice wall for him when they wanted to go vertical and down the field with pass protection. Tennessee's got to rush the quarterback better if they're going to help that depleted or that challenged secondary in the back end. Obviously, Tennessee's going to ride with the two safeties, the two veteran safeties. There's deficiencies there in terms of their closing speed and all of those types of things. So you got to get to the quarterback. And Tennessee just has not been able to get to the quarterback without games or bringing extra people. When they ran games last night, a couple of times Rattler took advantage of the void that was created by the stunt and the twist, and scrambled out of any potential trouble that could be there. So to help the secondary, they're going to have to find a way to get to the quarterback which is why I think you got to blitz, even if it's on 3rd and 20. You got to get people there and get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, because Tennessee just cannot hold up in the back end for an extended period of time.
Yeah, it's bad when you're sitting up there in the press box and it's 3rd and 20, and you look over to Austin Price and you say, how are they going to get this one? And sure enough, they get it. It's unfortunate. Brad wants to know, can you guys discuss Kamal Hadden and his trash talking from last night? Again, that's something I saw, Brent, in real time. That's something I saw in the rewatch. Man, I don't know. I understand confidence is part of a game. Kamal Hadden is not sure on confidence. He's a talented player. But when you're giving up a huge cushion and a first down and the sticks are moving, there's no reason to get up and talk and talk some trash. He did that a lot last night. He's done it a lot this season. That's unneeded. You need to worry more about yourself than talking to the other team.
Yeah, and obviously I think Kamal Hadden probably physically could have played the last few weeks, and I don't think Tennessee wanted to. That's not they felt like Turnage and Slaughter were their better options. Now they got a bunch of guys hurt last night. Rucker wasn't on the trip, and you're down Slaughter, you're down Turnage. You're kind of out of some bodies, with where you are right now. But no, I mean, Kamal Hadden's, he's bored. At times he's out of control with his mouth on the field. And, that needs to be reined in, particularly. He spent the fourth quarter arguing with Shane Beamer on South Carolina's sideline and jawing to him when, Tennessee was getting manhandled. So I'm not a fan of that. I think he's on the field last night because they didn't have any other options at corner. We'll see what they look like with those options this week. Again, you're right. He's talented. There are moments in time where he makes plays. He did not play very confident last night. He didn't play near as confident as he was in his trash talking ability last night, for sure, as he was given way too much cushion and gave up way too many pass receptions.
Also not a fan of Shane Beamer pointing over to the Tennessee sideline after his last touchdown. How about we act like we've been there before? That's not a good look for you, head ball coach. Taylor wants to know, he said, I don't understand how Flowers and Tank are still getting minutes. They not only kill us in pass coverage, but honestly offer nothing much in stopping the run or blitzing as well. It's the safeties, Brent. Two safeties have been playing for quite some time. We've discussed it a time or two as well, but I think the biggest thing and the reason why Tennessee is so ride or die with those two guys is they trust in their ability to know what to do more so than the guys behind them, obviously, because if they trusted in a Turrentine or a Walker to go back there and play, or a Jordan Thomas or anybody else, I think we would have seen them, correct?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Tim Banks handles the safeties every day on the practice field. And so, that's where they're going. My issue with them is I don't think they have I know they don't have great foot speed. But my other issue with them is I think they're slow to react. I don't think they react to things as fast as you would like in the run game. That's why I don't think you see them particularly in the box a whole lot on the run game. I thought they were late in reacting to stuff last night. Now, South Carolina was giving some eye candy and trying to confuse some things that are going on there. But I just thought they were late reacting. I thought Tennessee defensively looked slow. It was almost like they were a little bit paralyzed by analysis or whatever. And it seemed like they had a hard time kind of getting a beat on where the ball was. And I thought they were slow reacting. I thought they played slow last night. That's just my opinion, kind of viewing it live and seeing it on replay. I just didn't think they were that fast.
St. Louis wants to know, are we still the best offense in the country? Tennessee is still, through 11 games, leading the nation in yards per game, leading the nation in yards overall, and leading the nation with 67 offensive touchdowns. So Tennessee scored 33 points last night. Tennessee did not lose because of this offense. Was this offense perfect, Brent? Absolutely not. And, nothing is ever perfect. But Tennessee lost last night because of the defense, and, the offense is still statistically the best in the country.
Well, they made mistakes offensively. The problem was that you felt like you had that game, you could not make a mistake offensively. Yeah. You had to score every possession. Pressure was on Tennessee to score every possession. They didn't. Part of that was self-inflicted with the penalties that we talked about earlier. That opening drive of the third quarter, ball placement by Hendon Hooker to Jacob Warren was not very good. It was behind him, allowed the pass to be broken up, which forced a punt, the other punt there. And that was Tennessee's only 3 punts in the game. Now they had the turnover listen, I'm not blaming anybody for a turnover. Okay, I mean Hendon Hooker blew out his ACL,
Yeah.
clutched at his knee, and dropped the football. I'm not criticizing Hendon Hooker for that turnover there, but defensively, Tennessee didn't create any turnovers, and they forced Tennessee's offense to have to score every time they had the ball because I mean, other than the one drive, there was no stopping South Carolina last night.
I'm going to get one more question in here, and then I am finally going to ask you about what you think about
Okay.
Tennessee and where they're going bowling. Let's go back to St. Louis. St. Louis got some good questions here, and he wants to know, is Slaughter and Charles really safeties? Slaughter is an inside-the-box player. Slaughter's playing cornerback right now because he's probably Tennessee's best option at the time being. Charles came in as a safety last year, made a start before going out, and he's one of the better options at cornerback. I think that's what it comes down to, Brent, is, are you a better option than what you have at cornerback right now? Let's try to find the right pieces together. But Danico Slaughter, Christian Charles, Brandon Turnage, even Trayvon Flowers, there's all some versatility there, and those two guys have played safety in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think Charles is much more comfortable at safety. I don't get the sense he's ever been comfortable at corner. At least he hasn't looked it on the field this year. He got picked on in that Pitt game early in the year, and he's had a hard time. He's been healthy, and he's been unhealthy. He's been banged up, but he's had a hard time, gaining some confidence out there. Slaughter's on record saying he doesn't really like to play corner. That's not where he wants to play because there's not enough action for him. He wants to be in the box either as a safety or a nickel guy.
After he made
Now,
two really good plays as
right
well in
now
Kentucky.
he's playing it, and he didn't play well last night. No, I mean nobody played well on defense last night. I mean, they didn't. They gave up 10 plays of 20 yards or more defensively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, I mean that's just South Carolina did some good things schematically, and Tennessee didn't handle things defensively at all. I mean, they were just poor. You watched it live and it was poor. You watched it on rewind and it was really poor. So it wasn't any one person. There was not one level of the defense that you walked out and went, say, that group played pretty well. You didn't feel that way about anybody last night.
No one wants to hear this right now, and I understand. Tennessee got smacked yesterday. Tennessee was a 3-touchdown favorite on the road, and it lost 63-38. I get it. When you start winning, the stakes get higher. I understand that. Playoffs are now off the table. It's unfortunate, but if you told me in week 11 of the college football season that Tennessee would not only be in a play for the college football playoffs, but sitting in a really good spot, I would have told you you're crazy. I said, hey, get out of the bar there. You're drunk. But that's what winning does for you. Tennessee does lose. Tennessee's still in a really good position for a New Year's Six bowl game, albeit it might not be the Sugar Bowl, but whatever they do, Brent, they got to handle business against Vanderbilt on Saturday.
Yeah, and listen, you're going to hear that argument from a lot of people who say, if you just said 10 wins in August, then everybody would have jumped all over it. And that's true. But when you put yourself in the position that you got yourself into, the opportunity to go to the playoff isn't there every year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, maybe it is for Georgia right now. It's been that way for Alabama. But you know what? Oklahoma's not making the playoff this year, right? Clemson doesn't look like they may, but it doesn't look like they're probably going to get in. So when you get to the doorstep like that and you don't deliver, that's where that hurts. And that's why that one last night was so painful because A, you're the heavy favorite, and B, what it cost you. It was such a costly loss. As for where they are in the bowl pecking order right now, understand this about the Sugar Bowl. The Sugar Bowl will take the highest rated SEC team in the playoff rankings who's not in the top 4. Okay. Tennessee is not going to finish as the second highest ranked playoff team in the SEC, in my opinion. I think Alabama is going to be ahead of them. They're ahead of them in the AP poll. I think they were 2 spots behind them in the college football playoff ranking last week, or maybe 3. Tennessee's going to fall behind them. So if Alabama beats Auburn and Tennessee beats Vanderbilt, Tennessee's not going to leapfrog them. So I think that right now it would be Alabama to the Sugar, provided that LSU loses to Georgia. Okay, if LSU beats Georgia, then we'll see what happens there. You're probably getting 2 playoff teams in. It's probably still Alabama to the Sugar Bowl, but we would have to see how that goes. From that point there, it's going to be the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl is going to take they have the same parameter for the ACC. Then their other opponent is the highest ranked SEC or Big Ten team not in the playoff. You say, okay, well, that could be Michigan. If Michigan loses, they're going to be ahead of Tennessee in the playoff ranking. But the caveat there is the Rose Bowl's got their protection, Eric. If they're not hosting a playoff game or the championship game, then the protection for the Rose Bowl is the Big Ten and the Pac-12, which means Michigan should go to the Rose Bowl, which would leave the Orange Bowl opening likely for Tennessee at that point against an ACC team. That's kind of what it feels like it would be if Tennessee wins. Could the Cotton Bowl, could somebody else be ranked higher and it ends up being the Cotton Bowl? Perhaps. But I think if Tennessee wins, that's going to be the Orange Bowl or the Cotton Bowl. If Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt, then you're probably looking at the Citrus Bowl, and you're out of the New Year's Six. So this game's a big game. You don't want the legacy of this season to be that you wilted in November, that you collapsed the last 2 weeks of November. That's why this is a huge opportunity Saturday, and Tennessee needs to capitalize and take advantage of it, even when they're dealing with all they're dealing with, which includes, the injury to Hendon Hooker and the adjustments they've got to make there, and then trying to figure out what they're doing defensively.
Yeah, I was going to say, more than anything, you just want to finish this thing off the right way, because this has been such a good season. You have accomplished so much, and I understand. I mean, the loss is just horrific. What happened in Columbia, it was pathetic defensively. I get it, but you don't want to lose to Vanderbilt, who has everything to play for, and Tennessee is just kind of limping right now. You want to finish this thing off the right way, and then obviously a New Year's Six bowl game would be a whole lot of fun as a consolation prize. Let's grab a quick 60. When we come back, Austin Price is going to be in here. Let's get his thoughts on the game. And hey, Tennessee picked up a commit today at the running back position. We'll tell you all about Khalifa Keith, that and more when the Rocky Top Rewind returns. We'll go back into the Rocky Top Rewind every Sunday night here in football season from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Eastern on the VolQuest YouTube channel. Of course, you can find us at volquest.com as well. If you're watching this, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And as we do each and every time of the show, around 8:45, 8:50-ish, let's bring on Austin Price. Austin, you and I sat next to one another along with Grant Ramey in that press box. It wasn't pretty yesterday. Some of your overarching thoughts now about 24 hours out from game time where Tennessee lost to South Carolina.
Like I said on the general's quarters earlier today, I understand it. Screaming you bucket, get it out of your system, and you got to turn your attentions quickly to Vanderbilt. I mean, you can't dwell on it. It is what it is. Tennessee got their butt whooped last night. Defensively, they had no answer. 9 touchdowns on 10 possessions. I mean, that's sad, ridiculous, pathetic, pitiful, about a lot of adjectives that you could use. They just couldn't get off the field. Couldn't get off the field on third down, couldn't get off the field on fourth down. And, we've seen that in stretches at points this year, but not sustained, where Tennessee just could not stop anyone. And they could not stop Spencer Rattler last night. And that vaunted South Carolina offense has been so good all year. And then, of course, you had insult to injury. You had Coy go out and not return there in the second half. You had Hendon Hooker, obviously, with the torn ACL. He's done for his career. Cedric Tillman, got a hit on his leg. I could see him, being real doubtful this week. I just ultimately this just was a train wreck nightmare game that, the leadership on this team will be tested, and we'll see if they can rise to the occasion because, they still have a lot to play for, but they could easily have it go the other direction, and the old, they remember what you do in November turns into, make it go away, wake me up when September ends, type of stuff.
Austin, you mentioned Hendon Hooker. Obviously, you don't want to see anybody get hurt like that. You don't want to see a quarterback get hurt like that, a team captain. When you think of Hendon Hooker, what he's meant here in a short time at Tennessee, I think he's a name that everyone's never going to forget. I mean, he'll be remembered for long after he's gone. His Tennessee career comes to an end, but he did a lot in a short time here in Knoxville.
No, you're right. He did. And after so many years of instability at the quarterback position, he stabilized the position for Tennessee. And, when Joe got hurt, against Pittsburgh last year, Hendon came in, stepped up. They came up short in that game, but, we quickly found out, Tennessee had a guy there, and he got better and better and better. And as good as he was last year, he was even better this year. Good community, and again, no matter how good the quarterback play is next year, the rest of this year, 5 years from now, people will still talk about Hendon Hooker and what he did for this program. And, kudos to that man.
Yep, he accelerated the process for Josh Heupel. There's no question about that. That everything was sped up because of that. Now it's on Joe Milton, Austin, who was really good friends with Hendon Hooker. It's the first guy that went to Hendon when he got off the field last night to head to the medical tent. They're roommates. They're very close. I would imagine Hendon's going to help Joe as much as he can this week prepare. The question, Austin, is how much different is this offense? Does it change with going to Joe Milton versus what Tennessee has seen out of Hendon Hooker all season long?
Well, I think there'll be certain aspects of it that will. I think I'd love to see more run game. Joe looks like a different kid. Last year he shied away from getting hit and contact, and this year he's lowering his shoulder, lowering his head, using kind of he becomes a big dump truck out there. He's looked really good when they've asked him to run, even when he's had to escape. He's shown some physicality, and I like that about him. I'm interested to kind of see where things go with him in the passing game. I still think you're going to see a ton of vertical shots, but can he complete those 10-yard pass, 10-yard pass, 10-yard pass? I think that's something that Vanderbilt will likely try to make him do Saturday night in Nashville. And Joe says he's grown a lot, and he's going to get an opportunity to show it because this is his show. Tennessee doesn't have a whole lot of depth there. But I still think you have to run this offense the way you would, if you had four guys behind him, because Tennessee's got to be aggressive because they've got to go win this football game. You can't sit back and be passive. You've got to be aggressive and go win it.
Talk about the depth there. I mean, Joe Milton's it right now in terms of scholarship quarterbacks. Hendon Hooker's out. Taven Jackson is out with a collarbone. You have Joe Milton. Gaston Moore would be the number 2 behind him. Navy Schuler would be an option as well. But in terms of scholarship quarterbacks, Joe Milton is it right now. Austin Price, Tennessee for the class of 2023, picked up a commit earlier this afternoon. It was always a question on when, not if, and running back Khalifa Keith, formerly a commit of Kentucky, commits to the University of Tennessee. 22 commits now, and Will Stallings out of the class. Khalifa Keith now the running back in this class for Josh Heupel.
Yeah, that one's been trending hard to Tennessee for a while. He visited 3 times this fall for games. Most recently, for the Missouri game. Just felt really comfortable here. Felt really comfortable with Jerry Mack, and Tennessee wanted that bigger back, and this is their bigger back. And again, he's not. When you say size, you're talking maybe 1.5 inches taller than the guys they currently have, but it's the weight. He's already 230 pounds. You could reshape that 230, but that's 20 pounds heavier than the backs you have on your roster. So, I think this is a nice, solid addition. How good will he be? Only time will tell. No one had, Junkins at, Ole Miss being what he is. So, is he another Alabama tailback that kind of, slips under the radar, so to speak?
And will Tennessee still look to the portal? I know they're going to look to the portal for a number of areas, but if there's a running back out there that they feel like would be a fit, and it wouldn't be just a guy to take, I feel like Tennessee would still take a running back out of the portal.
Yeah, I think if there was a dude, I think they would. I don't think they would just take a body to take a body. So yeah, very much so. I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. Is if there's a guy that is an instant impact, big timer, then I think you would see them go that route.
All right, I ask you this every single week. Now there is a commitment date. David Hobbs, 5-star defensive lineman, will make his college decision on Friday. Where does Tennessee stand this week? Tennessee's been in good position. Will Tennessee close this one out, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they will. I don't, again, I don't think Tennessee has ever fallen out of the lead. Georgia made a run; they passed Alabama, but I'm not sure they ever got to Tennessee's stratosphere. And this all goes back to Rodney Garner and the defensive support staff doing a nice job when he was here for camp, when he was here for all those games this fall. It really kind of got flipped on its head a lot in my mind when he came here for the Florida game, subsequently came back for the Alabama game, and Tennessee just got so much momentum off those two visits that I just don't think that either one of the other two teams could catch up to them.
Austin, this is kind of a strange time in recruiting. It's a new era with everything that's in place with the window for the transfer portal. Tennessee's obviously playing a huge game on Saturday, but these windows are coming fast. You got to have an idea of what exactly you need. How awkward is it in college football right now to have some of the conversations you're probably going to have, later this week, into the weekend, to know exactly what your roster number looks like? I mean, this is a strange time in the calendar, the way they've set this early transfer portal window to open up. Don't you think?
It is. I said that going in. Like, had Tennessee won, Saturday night and beat Vanderbilt, I think you would have seen kids on this team go into the portal, maybe even ones that, play for you, because they're either trying to angle for an NIL deal or they're hearing they might get one somewhere else. I think that, you're going to see that across college football, players that are on good football teams, that end up going into the portal. I don't, that one right there don't even count. I mean, it's here for 34 seconds. At the end of the day, I do think it is an awkward time. I think that's the best way to put it, Hover, is it's an awkward time, because you are trying to figure out what you need, what you don't need, and then what comes available. Because there might be a top shelf player come available at a position you don't really need help at, but, adding this player is just, too good to pass up. And that might be something that all schools end up doing over the next few months.
Well, and the other thing too is, I mean, it's one thing to find, the Power 5 guys that are going in, but you're trying to you've got real needs, right? And you're trying to figure out who some guys are. And do you want, like, for example, there's a guy at Stony Brook, a tight end that went in the portal today. I don't know if he's any good or not, right? But I mean, we've seen some of those guys go up a level, and those guys have been good players. It's hard to kind of figure out who all's out there. I mean, you're spending on trying to figure out who some of these guys are in your evaluation, because you got to go fast, Austin, if you have interest in someone, because if you're late here in this short window, you're not going to get invited to the party to even have a chance.
No, that's right. You have to be, the moment a kid, I mean, a lot of times you need to know ahead of time, right? And then, but if you don't know ahead of time, you've got to be so quick on reaching out. It's got to be warp speed. So a guy like Billy High, who, will help Tennessee in the portal stuff, that's something that, he's going to have to be really on top of it the next few weeks, because, Tennessee's going to see a lot of players go in the portal, some from their own team, some from other teams that they're trying to land. And you've got to figure out, like, hey, we got to figure out how to get this kid back, or we got to get this kid on a visit to try to get him, get him on our team.
I got one more question. I know we're up against it, but let's go back to David Hobbs real quick. Again, he's the 5-star defensive tackle, going to make an announcement at some point on Friday. We'll see if Tennessee is the school.
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. If Tennessee is the pick here, Austin, and again, coaches, they recruit players that they like, but would that add more, obviously it will, but more validity to this class? That's another 5-star. Nico comes in March. You thought some more would roll in with them. This is on the defensive side of the football, but this is a really big fish, not even literal and figuratively. I feel like this would add a lot more validity to Tennessee's class here in 23.
Well, it would. And again, it's position of need. You need help on the defensive line. It would be a big deal. And again, look who you're beating out there, right? I mean, you look at the recruiting prediction machine. That thing's not always accurate just because it weighs so much things, and sometimes things don't. Sometimes you follow the visits, sometimes you don't. But Tennessee sitting there, against Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. I mean, that's the best of the best in college football. So you're able to beat them out for a defensive lineman, you've done pretty well.
We got plenty of recap from Tennessee's loss to South Carolina up on the front page of VolQuest.com. We'll have plenty more in the coming days. We'll look forward to Vanderbilt. Of course, it's crossover season. Tennessee Hoops is in action. You've got recruiting news today, potentially on Friday. There's a whole lot going on at VolQuest.com. And, hey, it's going to be $10 until kickoff next year. So we did the $1 for 1 year for a long time. It is $10 until kickoff of 2023. Take advantage of that over at VolQuest.com. Please like this video and help it get out to more Tennessee fans. Please subscribe to VolQuest on YouTube if you haven't already. And join us at VolQuest.com for everything we do every single week. We got the Monday night chat coming up tomorrow night, so it'll be a whole lot of fun there as well. This has been the Rocky Top Rewind. I'm Eric Kane, Brent Hubbs, and Austin Price. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will do it next week at Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here on the Rocky Top Rewind.